Welcome to another episode of the Obvious Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Omar. We got Joy on the line. And today we actually have a special guest, Damon. And correct me if I'm wrong, Damon, on this. Your last name is Pistolka?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, perfect. And Damon is a founder of Exit Your Way. Uh, Before we get started in the actual show itself, Damon, tell us a little bit about you, your business, what you do, and what you look for.
All right. Thanks, Omar. Yeah, myself a little bit. I've got a long history. I started out in engineering, then I started working in manufacturing and ended up running manufacturing companies for a large portion of my career for investment owners. And ultimately, I stopped doing that in about 2009 or 10, something like that. And I started my consulting journey where I really began helping people and businesses do different things. I built some facilities. I did some things like that because I like that kind of stuff. And ultimately, then in 2015, I reunited with an old business associate to start Exit Your Way and start doing the work we're doing today, which is helping owners solve their problems, build valuable businesses, and sell them when they're ready. So it's been
Cool.
It's been a wonderful time and full of challenges.
I could imagine. No, and I could only imagine like the kind of things that you're looking for, right, to be able to help your clients. Because obviously one of the biggest things, given the title of our podcast, is leadership is going to be pretty important, right?
Yes.
Because I take it you come in, you look at the processes, and you find ways to help them optimize what they're doing, and be able to maybe break into new markets so that they can have a better, just better business coming through the door, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you only really focus on like people that are looking to exit their industry, or are you guys like looking for partners that you assist on like a long-term contract or long-term basis?
We help people on a long-term basis as well. I mean, we got clients who've had over 5 years that we've been helping grow their business and just solve problems along the way. And that's really what we do. And it is about leadership. It is about making sure you've got the right people in the right places. And that changes over time as you scale a business, obviously, and making sure the systems and the people and the leadership are being developed along the way to continue driving or leading that business forward. So.
Yeah, so I guess that was part of my question, with your introduction is I kind of wanted to know, like, at what point or do you see business owners reaching out to you typically? Is it at the high point of their business? Is it typically, at a low point or when they're having a certain frustration? What do you typically see?
It's around frustrations. It's usually they're plateaued. They're working harder, but things aren't getting any better. And it really don't, their efforts aren't giving them the return that they want.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that's not surprising.
Yeah.
Because, with people working with something that they built, and then running into certain frustrations, I feel like definitely people get to a certain sense of, man, I need help. I need direction. And, it's great that you're offering a service like that for business owners.
Yeah, really, we take a lot of the principles that have been around for a long time, the principles we used when we were running investor-owned businesses as well, and bring those to these founders that have usually are really good technical experts, but they may not really have taken the time to understand business structure and leadership and things and systems sometimes too, or to seek out the best and brightest in different areas of their business, like could be marketing, could be sales, could be finance, or just technology too. And that's one of the key things that we bring to our clients is we spend a great deal of time talking with people that are leaders in technology, that are leaders in leadership, that are showing people how to do things better. And because then we can bring the right resources to the situations as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the big thing that I think small business owners may have a misconception about is that they need to be the resource. And I know that at a certain point in their growth, there needs to be a switch between yes, they were that most important resource, but then there comes a time when they need to build a certain set of resources around them to support the businesses. And I'm sure that's what you help with a lot.
Yeah, and that really creates a valuable business, right? Because if the owner is the value in the business is not valuable without the owner. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So by helping them get the resources, the people, the systems they need that can really support that business and operate that business without a ton of their involvement on a day minute by minute basis, the more you can do that, the more valuable the business will be.
Oh yeah, big time. It's kind of like we've said this before, Joe. It's like, you mean I have to understand people?
Yes,
I can't just be, this me in this, and I actually have to have people.
there's a
Uh,
lot about that.
I, I guarantee you've seen that before with like, because I know we've talked about it before. Like one of the biggest leadership struggles that not just management but also owners will have is the ability to let go and allow others to take ownership, right, over like a process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I can only imagine some of the struggles.
Well, and well, oftentimes that doesn't go well with owners because they'll say, I could give Omar, I could give you responsibility for something. Okay, you've got responsibility. Well, how do I know as an owner, how do I know that it's being done? So if you lay out key performance indicators around it that says, I like that. I like the example of a janitor, right? If I'm a janitor in a company and we've got 27 trash cans in the company, I need to know that if I empty 27 trash cans every day, and if the owner gives me the responsibility as the janitor to empty 27 trash cans, if I put the little 27 up on the board every day as how many trash cans I completed, everybody knows I did what I was supposed to do that day. The owner, you, everybody's is better off because of that. And these performance metrics or these simple indicators of success for the person doing the task and the people that are leading is so key in that handing off of responsibilities, because define what's really critical to it, measure it so that the person doing it and how they're doing based on that. And that's one of the key pieces that's often missed when people
Mhm.
give someone else responsibility to do something.
Hmm.
Dang.
So that's interesting. So I mean, you're saying that basically, I mean, instead of having to micromanage somebody and kind of be over their shoulder, like watching you in your example, change those trash cans, like let's trust that we're gonna develop a process so that you and I both know that that's being done without me having to follow you around and make sure that that gets done.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, all you're doing is wondering and following people around and micromanaging, like you said. The only way to get out of it is to get that understanding between yourself and the person doing something that you're given responsibility to. What success looks like, how we're going to measure it on a whatever basis, daily, weekly, hourly basis, monthly, whatever it is, and how are we going to communicate that? So, and then just if there are problems, what are we going to do? How are we going to do that? Those are just simple things that can make it so much easier for everyone.
Yeah, I think that, coming from a retail background, I feel like when I work with corporations, they have things like that, right? And I was grown in that sort of, reporting mentality. And, during that process, I've interacted with a lot of small business owners, and a lot of small business owners know how to run their business, but not necessarily make it efficient from that standpoint. And I feel like, that's one of the things that I mean, I don't even know what that's called. I mean, I don't know if you call it reporting or just problem solving, or I don't know what that term is called, but that's something that I think a lot of small business owners need help with.
Yes, it is, and it's common because it that last step in it is very not very common to take it. So these business owners, these small business owners are often, they always say, I'm juggling all these balls, but I've got all these other people. Well, if you put this together right, and you're not juggling balls, you're absorbing the information that's coming back to you, and you know where I need to go, rather than I have to go out and look at 10 different things. I'm looking at the one thing that I know is not going well today, that I need to help put my effort, give more resources, whatever it is. Then your day changes a lot, because now I'm spending time on my one area where I need to, or two, or whatever it is. But then the time that I spent doing all that other, just checking, I can be leading, I can be moving our business forward in different ways. I can be doing a lot of things that are going to make sure we're successful far into the future.
Yeah,
Well
it kind
said.
of reminds me of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, right? When he talks about the four quadrants. Because what you're describing essentially is that mind shift from being self-employed. Because you can own a business, but if it needs you in order for it to run, you actually don't have a business. You're just self-employed with a lot of different employees,
Yeah.
right? And just making that switch from that from self-employed to the actual business mindset of letting others take responsibility, having metrics to be able to follow up, so that whether you're there or not, the business is still operating, still running, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, and I feel like we're asking you a whole bunch of questions. If you have any questions for us in our back, most definitely shoot them over. But
yeah. Well, what do you guys see when you're working with businesses? What are some of the common challenges you see?
So part of what I see is a lack of, I guess it's being proactive and problem solving. I think, and honestly, that's just a passion of mine. I don't like to run into the same roadblock twice. I feel like when you have a small business with multiple people, everybody's running into roadblocks. But sometimes the communication isn't there to help everybody avoid those roadblocks, to help everybody move forward in a more synergistic way. I feel like that's one of the things that there's not enough attention that is given to the communication part of avoiding problems.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then making sure that everyone knows about them and how they've been solved too, because the same problem will be solved by 6 different people, 6 different times, 6 different ways.
Right. Yeah. And it might take one week to get, past that problem, where it might take somebody 1 hour. Right. And that's how you increase the efficiency of your people, your business, and, just lead to better profits down the road, I feel.
Yeah. Cutting out the redundancies. I know with so my main focus is a little bit different. I focus more on like the coaching aspect of leadership. It a lot more than that, but that's essentially the core thing, because I've come from a background of just seeing like the hiring process be just so old school mindset, where you come in, I have Joey come in for an interview, and I just have a gut feeling that he's the guy that I need. But his background's not there, his skill set's not there, right? As opposed to having that mindset of being able to bring somebody on board, having a process to be able to train that person appropriately, and understanding that consistency is better than having an employee, because I'm in a sales background. Having an employee that's just going to overperform 1 month, but then completely underperform the next. And it's just a roller coaster. And I don't know what I'm going to get this month or the next. But more importantly, reducing the churn for the employees. Because if you have a training program, if you have a way to actually be able to disseminate the information appropriately and be able to help them retain that skill set and learn a new skill and pivot when we need to pivot without losing employees, the cost to the business on the back end, it saves so much money compared to having to hire, needing to find and source the candidates, and then needing to train. I mean, you're really talking about a 6 to 9 month period before you actually start seeing any progress on that ROI, because it's still going to take another 6 to 9 months minimum to be able to make that money back. So you're out 12 to 18 months profitability on that employee.
Yeah, and in the sales role is something I think has changed so dramatically over the last 5 years, because Because I think two things, COVID, of course, that changed a lot of things, but the other thing that's really taken hold more than a lot of people give credit to is the fact that our buying audience has changed so much, for at least for B2B buyers, right?
Yeah.
And B2C too. But and the salespeople are changing too. So we really can't rely on, especially like in some of the B2B areas where I work, like manufacturing, that they're big accounts, they could be $100, $500 million or $1 million plus accounts or multi-million dollar accounts. So they've been able to kind of, we've been successful with our, 5 salespeople, and they're really good at what they do. Well, what they're finding is that other businesses in the same industry are often coming up out of nowhere and starting to surpass them, because they're using the methods that are really reaching to the needs of the current B2B buyers, which want to be able to find information, want to answer questions, want to be able to make a decision before they even talk to a salesperson, which is so key now. So you look at these businesses that aren't prepared for that. They don't have the training for their salespeople. They don't have the information together for their customers to understand better. So that means they don't have that information for their salespeople to understand well enough to do what they do and how their role is. I can go on a long time about sales, because I really think this is an area in businesses, especially if you're in B2B, that if you are not doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on your efforts, not only to train your salespeople on how we should be selling today, building the right digital methods to allow customers to really get farther down the sales process before they have to talk to anybody, you're missing out. You're going to go out of business. The e-commerce where we work a lot, that's a completely different thing. You got to be there or you're not there, right? But the B2B is where people, if they're not investing in that sales process, the training and the information, it's not going to be good in long term.
And I could imagine some, especially like smaller businesses, it could be hard, right? Because they have a network that they've created, and and I know that Joey, you have some experience with this. I think it's almost as though the business is based off of that personal network that they've created, and there's no actual real business, true new business coming through. So when you have a client or an account leave, it's a big chunk of the business.
Yeah, and so I can agree with that. I feel like a lot of times what is missing when it comes to sales, right? And this is just in general, whether it's B2B or B2C, is the training when it comes to just a sales process. Like, hey, what are we going to do consistently to exceed our customers' expectations? And what are we going to do to make sure that we're also evolving with the market, right? And that has to be something that is constant in any industry, I feel, because if you're not sitting here trying to get better than your competitor, then they're going to be passing you up very shortly. And that's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's changing and changing and changing. And if you're not changing, your customers are changing, whether you like it or not, the way what they need, what they want, how they do things. So you got to be reacting and making sure that you're ahead of that.
Yeah. It's kind of like the saying I say, change is constant. We may not like it, our employees may not like it. The truth of the matter is change is constant. And that's the one thing that we can always count on happening.
Yep.
It's one of those tough tools, right? To try to incorporate. And it's and I'm sure, Damon, correct me if I'm wrong, the actual implementation is not necessarily the most difficult. It's getting over that hump of, yes, we need to pivot to a new direction.
Yeah, getting people on board to make the change in the first place is the hardest part of it. Usually these aren't, ground shaking, earth breaking, or whatever you want to call it, technical changes or something like that that's going to cause us to rethink our, humanity or anything like that. It's like, okay, we're going to do this instead, and getting people to adopt the change and accept the change is really, it's as simple as like the thing that I really see in B2B now is the acceptance of CRMs in like a manufacturing companies. I mean, they still fight the heck out of them. They're trying to use their Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And like, listen, we have to be no, it's hilarious, right? It's like, well, yeah, we got a list of people in our CRM. It's like, well, you realize what it can do to you, it can do for you as a salesperson if you really use these things correctly. And it's like, oh wow, I would, you know, and it's like, these are the things that we have to help people see how they are as leaders, why it's going to benefit them, and why we need to have them do this. Is not an optional thing, unfortunately, but it will help. But how it will help them as well, because those changes are tough. Those changes are tough.
Yeah, it's funny because we just did an episode not too long ago on the topic of CRM, and with your respect, it reminds me of. So I've gone through like plenty of seminars, and one of the seminars I went to, for those watching and trying to understand how a CRM tool can really, really be impactful to your business. I forgot the gentleman's name, but many years ago, he was known as the best car salesman because he sold over a car a day. And for you guys that have done car sales, you know how that's not something you just do on average, right?
Yeah.
If you sell, 5 to 7 cars in a month, that's amazing. To sell one every single day is, I mean, beyond the norm. And one of his tools that he used was he would send a physical happy birthday postcard to his clients. A CRM tool essentially can do something similar where it can keep you friend of mind to your clients by sending an email out as like, hey, we're here for you, or, give you some kind of, to your point, Damon, right? Some kind of information to help you throughout the process without you needing to be physically involved in the process, right? It's an automated system.
Yes. It can do so many things, and it can tell you, like if they're visiting a certain section on your website, or, they're just, the automation, the process flows that it can help you with. I mean, it's as simple as, when you send out a quote for something, that it can automatically follow up a day after, 5 days, 10 days, whatever, and do all these things that you would have had to remember before. Mm-hmm. Or, simply say a thank you, like you said, after a good meeting with somebody, it could automatically send a thank you. And these kind of little touches are what makes a difference. Like the postcards for the people's birthdays at the car salesman. It's a huge touch, and it can all be done fairly easily with the right systems.
Yeah, it's actually funny because there is an automated way to send a physical postcard like that now.
Yep.
And it's a CRM service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it comes right out and it'll do it.
So just to kind of like put all this together, right? With all the work that and the information that we have to offer around leadership and improving processes and things like that, in your experience, like what's the turnaround time before you see somebody gaining traction around, whether it be an issue or some kind of implementation of a process that you see when you approach something like that?
Well, it doesn't necessarily take that long once you get something implemented, right? It's really the time to implement something depends upon, the challenges of doing it. But once something is implemented, if you're there shepherding the process, right? The leaders, and this is something that leaders can often miss the boat on, honestly, is I'm going to do an implementation of something and then I'm going to walk away, right? Well, you have to stay in that. You have to stay in it until it becomes a habit for the people that it's changing things, and just ensure that by talking, asking people how it's going, and then making sure changes get done, because nothing we implement in the first, pass is good, right? It might I shouldn't say good, but perfect, or the way we want it. It's usually it's an iteration. We got a little ways farther, and we got to do 5 or 6 things. So those leaders need to stay engaged and make sure that feedback comes back, changes are made, and it comes out to keep improving this thing, so people can see, yeah, we made it a little bit, and that's kind of cool. And we're making a little bit more to keep people engaged in the process of really getting where you want to go.
Yeah, you really got to call out those small wins.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's funny because Joe, you've heard me talk about this. I like me personally, I'm not a fan of that single day, 8 hour training, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, there, to your point, Damon, there is no focus on the actual implementation, on creating a habit out of it. Uh, can you do an 8 hour training and make it successful? Yes, through implementation, through
Mm-hmm.
habit building, through follow ups, right? It's a process to be able to get that built. Um, and once you have that inherently and you're focusing on those small wins, then you start seeing that momentum. It's like that snowball effect. It's little at first. And once it gains traction, I mean, good luck trying to stop it.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like sometimes, especially in the small business space, I feel like a lot of times they think that, the implementation is a one point in time event, right? And, so we put a lot of thought into the plan that we want to go forward with. And we lead up to that implementation date, and we get buy-in and things like that. But really, the most important part of the implementation process is what happens after that date, the attention that you give to it. And I feel like that's something that, really needs to be nurtured with small business owners.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a start. I mean, when you implement something, that's just a starting point, because like everything else is evolving around us, everything in our business should be evolving constantly. We
Yeah.
should be always looking at it, always changing and trying to get better with every bit of our business. I just was in a client yesterday looking at something that they hadn't changed in years. And I'm like, oh my goodness, do you realize how much technology is going to help us in this situation? And we're bringing the right people in. It's if you're not making those changes, my point is you can be missing opportunities to improve the lives of your people because they're doing things unnecessarily, and B, improve the quality of the services and the efficiency of the services you provide, but really keeping you in better terms with all of your customers as well.
Yeah. And when you think about the investment, right? Because obviously a lot of these tools, they're not going to be something you come in, even your services, right, Damon? It's
Mm-hmm.
an investment into what you're going to get from the business um, as an ROI. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get comfortable with it, to implement it, and to actually get it used, right? And getting comfortable with it. And once you do, that's a very small investment to the returns that you're going to get on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing that I always encourage our clients to do is really think about the investment you're making and go, okay, even if this doesn't work out, what are we going to learn from it? Because sometimes we'll try to implement something and it'll bomb, but we'll learn two or three things that help us in the next iteration of what we do that goes three times farther, because we didn't know what we knew there and we learned there. So now we do, and we're going to go forward a lot farther, faster after that. You're going to invest sometimes and it's not going to work out, but you need to keep investing, reflect, adjust, and move appropriately. Because the thing that I see a lot is people go, oh, well, I tried marketing, or I tried this, or I tried that, and it didn't work. Well, you didn't have the right person, right?
Yeah.
Because it's no different than finding a spouse. You may not be successful on the first try. Let's be realistic here, but people are successful over time, and it's just the kind of thing you got to do, because if you really want the most successful business possible, you got to be ready to fail, because if you're not failing and pushing that envelope farther, your competitors they're going to be going faster than you.
And it's not that you're failing, right? Because as long as you get up and you continue to move forward,
Yes,
it's a learning process. And I feel that sometimes a
that's
lot
true.
of owners, a lot of people in management, is one of the biggest fears is that I'm going to fall flat on my face and then everybody's going to be laughing at me, or everybody's going to be shunning me, looking down at me. And that's all in your head. Like that's all in your head. I know one of the leaders I used to work with in the past, and it was a very small little thing that he would do with the new hires, but it was so important to their psyche, is he would encourage them to fail. And he would tell them, if you don't make mistakes, I know you're not trying to learn and you're not doing your job, because I expect you to make mistakes. I expect I'm going to have to at least, and at that point, I think he was a district or regional, and he would tell them, I expect that I'm probably going to have to step in at least once in the next 90 days to help you with something, because you made a mistake, and I'm not going to fire you over it.
But
Yeah.
you know, like the way I relate all of this is I can think back to me being a fresh salesperson, my first sales job, right? And you know, I was never an outgoing person, but like I had to get out there and learn what was going to work. And I mean, it took me some time to find my footing, you know, how I need to communicate with customers, what was working, what didn't work. It was a lot of trial and error to get me to where I am today. And you know, I still don't consider myself a salesperson. I provide value for my customers, right? I solve problems. That's the way I look at it, and that's how I approach my sales process, right? And I definitely think, you know, part of the implementation process, you know, the things that we're going through for changes for small business is the same way. You're definitely going to fall flat on your face sometimes, right? But if you're not doing that, you're not trying to move forward.
And I think for some owners, the difficult part is that title that they carry, right? Because they feel that I'm the person at the top. I need to be the person for everybody in the organization. And it could be tough to acknowledge. And Damon, you mentioned it earlier, right? Understanding when to bring in people that have better expertise and knowledge in aspects that you don't. That's the whole point. You're bringing people together that know more than you do in other aspects to ensure that the business actually moves forward in the direction you're wanting and you're envisioning.
Yeah, it's just sometimes they're gonna be, you can't be an expert at everything, nor do you want to be. You want to understand where you want to be your best, where you're the best at, and be that, and get others around you to help you where you're not. And it's there's so many things in business now that require specialized knowledge that you just can't keep up with as a generalist. And you know, look at things like the HR, the technology. There's just so many of these pieces, and it's so easy to find fractional resources now across the board for a business to be able to go, okay, we need this piece of our HR. I think is a great one to talk about. The technology is another one that's real easy. Even when you look at some of the sales and marketing stuff, there's pieces that you can put together, or you know, I'm not a big fan of going to the all-in-one places because it seems like you get kind of a diluted base of everything. But when you can find your group of specialists that are really going to help you in a small business, you can go a long way like that.
Yeah, and for those who may not be familiar, right, what he's mentioning with the fractional businesses is you can actually bring somebody in, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know a couple of people that do this. You can bring in somebody essentially on a part-time basis to help you with that specialty, with that knowledge in the business itself.
Yeah. And high level people, that's the nice part about it is, you know, if you need a specialized person for finance or operations or sales and marketing, you can bring them in on an as you need basis and get that experience level, but in the doses that you can actually digest and utilize. Because that's the one thing about a small business, right? If you got a small business and you just said, listen, I'm going to go all in and I'm hiring the best salesperson in the world, and they're going to come in and blah, blah, blah. Well, you're probably going to fall flat on your face, because in a matter of maybe a month or 2 months, they could overrun your entire business with so much new sales you didn't know how to do it. And you're flubbing everything up, and it's a big crash, right? Because you're going to go peep, you're going to peak, and then you're just going to crater, right? You know, so you really got to understand how much of this you can do. And it's the same thing with any kind of consulting as well, right? If you're just helping with change management or things like this, or strategic implementation of stuff, you really got to understand how much time you can, based on the size of the business, how much the company is going to be able to digest and properly work with. And that's why I think a lot of people, and you talked about this with the 8-hour kind of seminar, I think those are, and in my words, I think they're worthless, right? For a lot of things. They might fire you up for the day, but very little is long-term implementation benefits. But if you took that same 8 hours and did 1 hour a week and had some homework for somebody for 8 weeks in a row, you might get some real benefit from that same kind of thing. That's why I think these fractional resources are so good, because I might only need 2 hours of that superstar salesperson every week, and they're going to bring in just enough of what I need to do. They're going to ask just enough questions that I can get those fixed, so that, you know, get the information or whatever set up so the next week we're good, rather than I've invested this much money, which is a ton for us, and I can't even utilize it.
Yeah, that's got to be the worst, to, you know, be pretty much be run out of business because of too much business coming in.
Yes.
Because we hear it, right? All of a sudden you get this influx of business and the quality just goes down, and you lose existing customers, not just the new ones, but also the existing ones.
Yeah.
Because you just can't keep up with it. And that's an amazing topic. I know we haven't broached that before. And I know that from personal experience, there are owners out there that don't understand that they have those kind of resources available to them, because they feel that they have to go all in or they can't. There's no in between. And there's a lot of resources available in the business world, just having the right resource. And Damon, I'm glad we have you on board today to be able to understand what's available, what could be available, what could be possible, right?
Yeah, the fractional resources available now, and the global resources too. I mean, you know, there's a lot. You just can't limit yourself to what you can hire full-time employees from your region, right? I mean, we saw that COVID helped this remote workforce thing, but I'll tell you, when it comes to technical specialists, you can really go global. I mean, when you look at things like IT, you look at things like specialty, whatever, there are so many resources. It could be in North Carolina, it could be in India, it could be wherever. It doesn't really matter. You just really have to understand that our resources available are there in the amounts we need, with the skills we need, when we need them. You just have to look for them.
Oh yeah. Great. Do you have a question? You look
No,
at a question.
I'm like flabbergasted by all this information. Like for the people that are listening, you know, I feel like we're giving a lot of information, but I think like the message I'm hearing, and the one that's resonating with me, is, hey, 1% better every day, right? That's not, we're not asking for 1,000% in a month growth, right? We're talking about that 1% better every day, just a little bit of the time that you can sustainably do over years to come, right? And if that's what you're focused on, sometimes you'll have that 10% spike, right? But that's because you've put some attention to something, and that's where you should have been all along. But after that, you know, if you have that 1% increase every day, or, you know, however you want to measure it, I think is what is important when it comes to your small business.
Amen on that. Because it is like you going out and making a huge investment, you know, maybe in a piece of equipment or something like that. It's a little different when you have to bite that chunk off. But when we're talking about resources, right, with people, technology, anything like that, the more incremental you can make it in little bite-sized pieces, the better off you're going to be, because I can get that little piece, and I can make sure I'm using it right. And if I can get that little piece and we bomb on it, oh, it's just that little piece. We just move to the next one, right? You know, but I see this a lot in it used to be in manufacturing business. This is horrible. Still happens. You know, you can go out and spend $500,000 on an ERP system in a manufacturing company, and you can be sitting there 2 years later trying to implement the damn thing if you didn't select it right, or you didn't do this stuff. And so these technology things often suck people into, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment. But really, you need to understand, what are some practical things we can do today? Like you said, Joey, what's the 1% that we can do today? Because I'll bet It's just a change in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that next change will teach us something that might lead us to the next change, that leads us to the next change, that leads to the next change. And you keep doing that. Most businesses have 50% efficiency improvements if they just think about things simply, eliminating wasted work, figuring out how to really do only what we need to do better, and quit worrying about the stuff that we might think is important our customers don't care about, right? There's just so much of this stuff that as we build things up in our head as business leaders, a lot of it doesn't matter. A lot of it doesn't matter to our customers. And I was in a client this week, and we were talking about some of their internal operations and going through something that the people in finance were doing. And we were like, well, what do you do every week? And they listed out the things that they did every week. And it's not because I worried about you're doing enough. It's like, let's just make sure things are relevant are happening and the flow of what they're happening. And you look at the way things build up over time. We stripped out completely several hours worth of their work every week because this is something that we don't use anymore. Didn't you know that? No, we just we build it and it comes out, and and you just go, these things are happening all the time. And we look at efficiency and we think, well, we got a new systems, new technology. It's really not. A lot of it's really looking at, are we doing the right things now? It's so much fun to be able to do that, because how much did that cost you?
Yeah.
A little bit of time.
A little bit of time, and cuts out a lot of just redundant work.
I'm glad you brought that up, Joey. It's at 1% every day.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of what drew me to the name that we have, right? It's obvious leadership, right? It's the stuff that's right in front of your face that you don't put enough attention to, you lose sight of, that can really give you that incremental change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to be lean, pivoting, it works wonders. Even in large corporations, you can still be able to learn how to be able to be a little bit lean on the decision making and cutting out all that excess that you just don't need, really. Right. And talking about that, Damon, so I'm curious, if somebody was interested in finding out more about you, about working with you, what's the easiest way for them to be able to go about that?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. They can go to our website, exityourway.com. We do a lot of live streaming videos, so you can go on there and look up about, I don't know, we got 400 or 500 of them we've done. Wow. So different topics, learn more about us, see what we're like. And then just reach out. I mean, you can, on LinkedIn, I got a place they can get appointments, book an appointment, same thing on our website. So yeah, we'll talk. I mean, we really, our goal is to educate people. And we know that if we educate anyone that comes to us as much as we can, that, we're going to have all the business we need. And that's working so far. So we're just going to keep doing it.
Sweet. Well, Damon, I do want to thank you for jumping on board, giving us some insightful reminders of what it means to have that obvious leadership mindset, and a good peek into what you offer and, what you can bring to the table when it comes to others in their business, when it comes to their leadership.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us for another episode of the Obvious Leadership Podcast. We will add Damon's information to the descriptors as well. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's Obvious Leadership episode. Remember, every great leader starts with one step, and you're already on your way. Small changes lead to significant impact. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember that leadership is the key to unlocking extraordinary results.